Paramount Skydance launching a hostile bid for Warner Brothers Discovery after that company said it would sell its film studio and streaming service to Netflix. Joining us now, Matt Belloni, Puck, a founding partner. This is, I don't know, we live in this world, Matt. Is it more interesting to us than most people? I think there's just so much to talk about.
I don't know. I think this is something that has permeated the culture. I mean, The Daily has an episode on it today. The Pod Save America guys are talking about it. I think this is one that it's involving everything. Trump is now involved. It's all encompassing.
And I referenced some of your comments about Verushka and Daddy. I mean, you can throw that in there. You can throw, as far as Hollywood goes, it's like they don't like either, do they? It's either Barry Weiss putting CBS together with CNN and laying off people and turning it into MAGA land versus never releasing a movie in at an AMC again. But all of it's right on. It's the worst of both worlds for these people in Hollywood. They're going crazy. Their heads are exploding.
Yeah, it's certainly not an ideal situation, but then it becomes, what is the best possible outcome of the ones that are on the table? I mean, I guess you could say that perhaps the Justice Department will block either of these bidders, throw it back, and then there's potentially a scenario where Warner stays independent or there's a standstill period or something like that.
Their perspective on what's best is who's most likely to get blocked. That's why they like the Netflix deal?
Basically, there's lots of people in Hollywood that are rooting for one or both of these deals to potentially get blocked so that the studio will stay independent.
Trump Justice Department in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah, they were all asking for where's Lena Khan. Have you not seen those memes yet?
But exactly.
I still think Trump and Larry Ellison are buddies, and he may say I'm not that good of friends with either place. He's friends with the Ellisons. He is, and he may say he's not. And I think that deal would go through. If he goes to 32, I don't see how shareholders could say no. Do you?
I think that's a good bet, but the question is, would Netflix come back? They have a matching right here, and would Netflix go to 32?
It's not a real 32. You heard David Ellison yesterday say that stub is not worth $2 to $4. That's even how they get to 30 or 31. He said it's worth $1.
That is a very subjective claim. We do not know, and maybe when the Versant channels go public, we will see what a valuation of a group of television channels is right now. But there's analysts all across the board, anywhere from $1 all the way up to $5 a share valuing these. So we actually don't know, and it's very subjective. Ellison has his perspective, but others have theirs too.
I hope it's worth
there
$5.
Was 5 too. But that's interesting that Versant will be the mark to market.
Right, but they were already using metrics that Versant was giving it at the Investor Day, I think, or something. I mean, they were talking about revenue and what that could mean for value, and he came to $1 a share. That was his conclusion, David Ellison.
Yeah, Versant and AMC Networks are the comps that I have heard, although AMC Networks is much smaller, but that's what I'm told that they're looking at here.
Is this, I go back far enough to remember great oil and gas bidding wars. Is this going to turn into something we remember? Could it seems like the Ellisons are very dead set on getting it. And Netflix is probably dead set on it too. And then you got the Zaslav wild card. Why do you think all the conjecture is that they kind of dissed Ellison and didn't really listen to those bids and were sort of before anything happened? The friendship with David and Ted Sarandos. Does he want to run the studio? Does Zaslav want to run the studio and HBO Max?
I think there's a lot of different factors there. Judging, for one, Ted and David are friends, David Zaslav. I think Zaslav considers Ted to be a peer, whereas he may not consider David Ellison to be a peer. And I think that there's other stuff going on. There's been some feuding between the companies. I think what Andrew said earlier about, working with a big blue chip company like Netflix and having the dream of selling the company. I think Zaslav thinks that this is a better outcome for these assets and they will be a better steward rather than putting them in the hands
Blue Chip, they were mailing DVDs out. They had 1,500 titles a couple of years ago
30 years
that they were sending out in the mail.
That was in the 1990s.
blue chip company.
That was a while ago. I mean, they've been doing this for 15 years
I
as
know.
top streamer.
That's amazing that it's come to that. The most, these are the most storied names. And I mean, when you see the logos of Paramount or Warner Brothers or any of these, this is what Hollywood is. This is bogey. This is all that stuff. Netflix, I don't know what Netflix is. It's crappy content.
Matt, why did it take an auction, like somebody raising their hand and saying, I'll bid for this, before anybody thought these assets were valuable? What happened?
If you listen to Ted Sarandos, he says the fact that Warner's pared them down and got rid of the television aspect and made it a sort of pure play studio and streamers opportunity here, that's what unlocked their interest. They weren't interested until recently because of that. And all you need are two. I mean, Comcast was in, we knew from the beginning, because they have a real problem in streaming. They have Peacock, which is not scaled and not global. So HBO was always going to be interesting to them. And then, you have the Ellisons who are trying to roll up all these companies. It was sort of a perfect storm of interest here. And frankly, surprising to a lot of us in Hollywood that Netflix was willing to go in on it.
But I will tell you also, what you just said, this Ellison sort of wrap-up, that's the roll-up. That's the same thing that Larry Ellison has always done with Oracle. So maybe it's not some situation where David Ellison is pushing his dad to do this. Maybe that makes sense to Larry Ellison, too, that this is how we work. We do roll-ups and make a more valuable company as a result.
It's true, but Larry Ellison has two children, and both of them gravitated towards the entertainment industry. Megan Ellison had a bumpy ride with some of the movies she produced, very high quality, but didn't make a lot of money. And David Ellison has sort of been the more commercial one. He wanted to have a long-term viable business out of it. So they've been talking about this a long time.
You think Zaslav knew at $8 a share that you could light a fuse like this, that would end up where we are at this point, Matt? And I don't know where it ends, because, even by going with Netflix and sort of blowing off Paramount, that's why we're going higher from 30 that was his dream, 30. Now it looks like we might go north of 30. I mean, it's all playing into Zaslav's hands at this point. Is he a genius, or did it?
And what I said before, I think, is interesting. How high is Netflix willing to go? Because the Netflix shareholders have not loved this uncertainty, and even the bidding itself. The Netflix shares are way down. They've lost $100 billion in value since this has been revealed. So how high are they willing to go?
So who's gonna walk away with this, you think?
I still think at the end that Netflix is going to let Paramount have it at a certain point. The Ellisons feel like they need this. And ultimately, Netflix does not need this asset. Unless there's something going on there that we don't know about, they don't need this.
When you say they're going to let them, Matt, that means that you don't think they're going to raise their bid? I mean, if you get to a point at which Paramount bids, I don't know, they add a couple dollars per share to this offer, does Netflix come back? Does the board effectively switch and say, actually, we've rethought this, and given this, we're actually going to support this transaction instead?
No, I think that, I'm just talking about the Netflix matching right. They do have the right to come back if the Ellisons go up a few dollars. But I think there is a point at which they will no longer go up. And this stock situation and the investor reaction to their interest, I think, is a big factor here, because they have to watch that in a way that the Ellisons don't really have to watch that. They can go up as much as they want. And I think that is the key here, because ultimately, if David wants this and his father is supportive, that they are willing to go as high as they need to, Netflix at some point will bow out.
The Hollywood, the film Twitter, everything else, they were up in arms about Netflix. What happens when they realize there's going to be rationalizations? And that's a nice word for what happens when you put two studios together, even the cable, all that stuff. There's going to be layoffs en masse.
Oh, I've written about this in my Puck newsletter, and they said it yesterday. $6 billion in synergies they're planning between Paramount and Warner Discovery. That's about double what Netflix is planning in synergies, because Netflix isn't just two studios coming together where there's duplicative news divisions, film studios, television services. Netflix is in a different business, and Warner's does things that Netflix doesn't do, like theatrical distribution, like selling TV shows to other buyers. Things that would not be synergistic, those employees would stay at Netflix. So it's less in cost cutting and more in sort of adding to the business.